Hey, I'm Sid. Hey, I'm Sid, CEO and co-founder at GitLab, and this is CEO 101, where new hires get to ask questions about things. Emily, you have the first question. Thanks for putting that in. Do you want to verbalize it?
Yeah, how are you feeling this week?
Thanks. I'm good. We had a good weekend. We went skiing in Tahoe, which was fun. I now bought a mono ski, so I'm a beginner again on that thing. Those things were last popular in the 80s before snowboards were invented, because snowboards are much more practical, but it's kind of fun learning something new. My wife is a bit sick, so I feel for her because they're having a company all hands that she has a big task in. And yesterday she was out for a dinner, and I watched a lot of silly stuff on YouTube. And what else did I do? I tried to start a game, but it took a long while copying everything in, so I ended up not gaming, but just watching silly stuff. And I'm feeling okay. I'm excited about the week. I like when I'm not traveling and I can get a whole ton of things done. And we got a great pair of shadows this week in the form of Brittany and Dylan, so that's a lot of fun to learn from them. Thanks. Maxime, you have the next question.
Hey Sid, this is Max from Montreal. I got two questions for you today. First one will be, do you have any strategy in mind to maintain the GitLab culture while we keep growing every year?
Yeah, so as we keep, so at most companies, culture kind of dilutes as you add people. I think at GitLab, we got a better shot because we written down our culture to a huge part. And I'm seeing culture, there's two parts maybe in culture, like our communication patterns and our values. I'm going to focus on our values. I think that's the most important part. And so writing it down is a good start. Now we have to find more and more ways to reinforce them. And one of the things I'm excited about that we're trying now is that we're going to select some emojis that represent our values, so we can refer to them not just in Slack, but on more platforms. But continually trying to think of more ways to kind of reinforce it. We have 11 ways now, I think. Someone might add a link from our values page, the ways in we reinforce them, but maybe there's more things we can do.
Thanks. And second question is, what is your favorite day so far at GitLab?
Favorite day? That is a great question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I think I want to touch on two things, three things. The scene behind me, having everyone in New Orleans out on kind of, it felt like a music festival, the way it was organized. That was pretty special. I really appreciated that. I think the most intense day in GitLab history is Y Combinator Demo Day. And the most special thing that happened on that day was where Dimitri walked up to Ricardo Mars, who contributed our logo, and said, hey, do you mind if we get a new one because it gives people nightmares? He said, yes. And I know this person that specializes in Fox-like logos. I think that was very special. It was also very special when Aston Kutcher came up to me and said, hey, can I get your card? And I'm like, I'm out of business cards. Like, rookie mistake. Can I get yours? And he's like, no, I'm also out of cards. And then it was the closing of the day, so we got further and further away from each other as like other people. We were in the exit, so we pressed away and like, yes, we'll email each other or something like that. We actually did. He actually ended up investing. That was funny. Now, I think the most important day was the day that we had our at Y Combinator, our second group meeting, and all the other startups were getting a lot done in 2 weeks, and we weren't. And Dimitri and I drove back in the car like, hey, this is gotta end. We gotta get a lot more done. And that's where our iteration value came from.
Thank you.
And I don't want to forget the most recent highlight. I really loved GitLab commit in San Francisco. That was a lot of fun. Shem, you want to verbalize your question?
Yep, thank you. First of all, overall in the entire company, what are you most proud about with GitLab?
Most proud about? Well, I think our most important goal in the company is IACV. So I'm very proud that we're hitting 100 million in AR. I think the speed at which we've gotten to that is extraordinary. And a lot of things have to kind of combine for that to happen, all the way from having a great product to everyone working hard, great sales and great marketing, great hiring, and all the different things that added up to that. So if I had to name one thing, it would be the speed to get to 100 million ARR.
Well, thank you so much. Another question, if there's one department of the company that you think needs more growth than others, or you would just like to see grow more than others, which department would that be? Maybe not sales.
Well, I think it would be sales. I think sales needs to grow faster than others. I think the most important thing for us is to grow revenue. And with sales, as the company gets bigger, you can increase kind of the quota per salesperson a little bit. You get a bit more efficient, but it doesn't scale in the way that some other things scale. So we can expect sales to grow faster. At least that would be great, because then we're hopefully also growing sales.
Great. Okay, and one more quick question. What's the smallest contribution you can remember that somebody made that made the biggest difference?
Ooh, that's a great question. Ooh, that's an awesome question. I don't know the answer to that. I do know I'm really grateful for, like, every time I change something in the handbook, there's sometimes, like, not every time, but a lot of times, there's external people, like from the wider community, they kind of fix my spelling errors. And it's not the most glamorous job in the world to fix my spelling errors, but I really, really appreciate that those people that don't even work here, like, read my things and like, well, it's kind of decent what he wrote, but he can spell. Let me fix that.
Awesome, thank you.
I had one kind of anecdotal thing that happened too. I remember a few years ago, we as a people group were having a hard time learning how to code locally without having that technical background. And one of the front-end engineers actually came up with the idea of the web IDE because of that circumstance. So it was a simple, conversation or a training session that happened. Hey, can you show me how to work locally? I'm having a really hard time, which ended up turning into, I think, part of the product that is highlighted in a lot of different aspects.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. Frederick?
Yes. My question was basically, as I talked with engineers internally, one of the things that I've noticed is how we said some things like we want to be kind of the explorers of our product as we start project and features, and then kind of invite the wider community to participate so that there's a precedent that can be worked on. And I was wondering if, as the company grows or as the product matures, if that strategy will keep being the way we approach the product.
Yes and no. So thanks for asking that. It's super important, and maybe one of the shadows can add a link to our breadth over depth strategy. Right now, there's still a lot of things that happen in DevOps that are not part of our product yet. So I'd love for us to keep leading the way there. On the other hand, it is not an unlimited space. Like, we're gaining more and more. If you look at our homepage, I think we've represented a lot of the stages in DevOps. I think we represent a lot of the functionality, and we're doing a good job kind of exploring everything. So at some point, we're going to be not done, because it keeps moving, but we'll have like 90% coverage. And then I think the biggest thing we can add is make the UX, the user experience, better. And I'm going to name some examples, just because I want to kind of make it clear what kind of things I'm thinking about then. Right now, if you create an issue board, you get a thing like, hey, do you want to add these default columns? It's a question that comes out of the blue. There's no indication for the user how to answer that. You have to have a lot of understanding. I don't think that's convention over configuration. I don't think that's setting the user up for success. Right now, if you want to scale your application with Auto DevOps and Kubernetes, you have to do a redeploy instead of being able to kind of drag a slider to add some more scale. I don't think that's the right way to do it. Right now, if there's a vulnerability, there's no click button to say, hey, just rebuild all the Docker containers that contain this vulnerability. Those are kind of workflows that we have to get better about. That's why we're greatly investing in UX and research. And I think those are the things where the product can really shine. And some of these things are still breadth. If I think about these that rebuilt a Docker container, that needs collaboration between secure, between version control, between packaging, maybe monitoring. And it's a feature that's really hard to do without GitLab. So maybe the breadth is not going to be add this DevOps feature, but like have this workflow that is very broad.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking. Philip?
Hello, Sid. Philip Azork, Strategic Account Leader, Kansas City. First of all, thank you for building such an awesome company and letting us all be a part of this and contributing to the company. Very excited to be here. First question, what team are you rooting for in the Super Bowl? And be careful, because
I don't have to ask you what you're rooting for. Obviously, I'm in the Bay Area. I went to Levi Stadium once. I'm rooting for the 49ers.
Oh man, okay.
Okay, I hope we can still be friends.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for joining GitLab. I appreciate every one of you taking the jump to apply here and to join this company. And I hope that the one thing in common, we're hoping for an exciting game.
Yes.
Let's hope that it's not like the last game of the 49ers where they won so easily. Let's hope that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, it'll be a great game no matter what. I'm really excited for it. Thanks for answering that question. My second question was, outside of building this amazing company and culture, what do you like to do in your spare time? I heard earlier you mentioned you went skiing. Curious, what are some of the things you enjoy doing? Yeah,
so there's two big benefits to living in San Francisco. The first thing is the nature. So skiing in the winter in Tahoe. In the summer, we can go to Napa, wine country, go running and hiking and lounging by the pool and tasting wine. And then the even bigger benefit is like the people that are attracted here to the Bay Area. There's a lot of very smart and ambitious people, and I like to hang out with them. So I like to have dinner every night and then hang out with a fellow founder or something like that. That's been one of the highlights of doing this. Apart from that, I really love karaoke. I can't do it, but I'm pretty good at organizing it.
Awesome.
And maybe someone can find a Karaoke Curb Twitter account with some pictures of us doing that.
Fantastic. And then my final question was, as GitLab continues to grow, will we continue to do these really awesome contribute trips?
Who knows? People always say it's not practical, but then I remind them of like the stadium that's behind you. Like there's big stadiums in the world, so we can still all get together. I think it's about the perception. A lot of people see it as a discretionary expense that you can cut when times are bad. I view it as something that's essential to making people feel part of something. I think that mindset is really important. And it also kind of, the requirement on us is, hey, the event is meant for people to establish new connections in the company, get to know other people. So if you're just hanging out with the same people, or if you're just hanging out with people of your function, if that starts to happen, then the benefit is gone. So it's a bit on all of us to kind of make sure it keeps adding value. And maybe
cool.
Shadows, that's something to write up in on the contribute page. Leslie?
Hey Sid. So I actually have two questions, so I'll probably add on to this once you're done. So sometime during my interview process, I asked pretty much everyone, you know, how do you like working remote? Because my job before this, you know, we had some remote days, but I still went into the office. So I kind of wanted to see everyone's take on it and how they adjusted to it. And at some point, I can't remember who it was, they told me that GitLab was going to hire a director of remote culture, which I thought was really interesting. So I kind of wanted to just learn more about that role. Just kind of, you know, like, what do you have planned for that role, and what do you want to see coming out, like, at the end of the year? Like, what changes may you have in mind, just for kind of building that stronger remote community?
Yeah, I'm not up to speed on the latest plans there. We have a head of remote in the form of Darren Murph, who's doing an awesome job of talking about it, but most importantly, writing about it. I think the All Remote Guide is like an amazing resource. It's like 2 books or something. It's great. I could see us do more in distributing that content in the form of documentaries, books, podcasts, conferences. But I'm not aware of the latest plans there.
Cool. And then my second question and final question is, you mentioned Napa. I was actually going to put in the document if you're more of a beer drinker or a wine drinker, but now I guess you're a wine drinker. So red or white?
I am a beer drinker, so IPAs. But there's
Are you more of a red person or a white person?
More of a white person. White person sounds weird, but the more white wine, even though I know it's unsophisticated, but I like that more.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mike.
Hi, Sid. Thanks for doing this. This is unique in my experience. I think it's great. I wanted to continue on the first question that Leslie had. I've always preferred the term distributed to the term remote. Remote kind of makes me feel like I'm far away from the center where everything's happening and far away from the action. What are your thoughts about those two terms and why we have one versus the other?
I totally agree. I think GitLab feels much closer to me than most of the co-located companies I've been at. But it's distributed can mean a lot of things. And I've seen companies that are co-located but have multiple offices call themselves distributed just because they have multiple offices. So it doesn't seem to be as clear as a qualifier. And the whole trend is called the remote working trend. So I think I thought about it. I considered it. We tried it. I maybe even tried it a little bit, but I think remote is a better qualifier. And I think what we're going to see going forward is we're going to see a clear delineation between remote companies in some fashion, like, hey, we support remote as a company, versus the all remote companies where the leadership is not in the same place and they don't work from an office. And I think people who work remote are gonna also start making that distinction. Where I think at the moment, attracting some people that say, hey, I worked at a remote company before, but I want to work at an all remote company because I don't want to be a second class citizen. Is there someone like that in this call?
Yeah, I worked at a company like that, actually. It was a hybrid approach, and it really didn't work that well.
Cool. Anybody else?
Yeah, from my previous company was hybrid as well. Some days remote, or some people were fully remote, and I think that the worst of it is the meeting, when you have like everyone in the same room and the noise is horrible, and then everyone from home is just not hearing anything at all. So it's it's not ideal.
Familiar problem. We had that with our board, and we have a section in the handbook called "Hybrid calls are horrible." Anybody else?
Yeah, I had that experience as well. Sorry. In my former company, I was remote, and most of my team was in the office and in another time zone. So it was very hard to participate on decision-making processes and all that. And besides all the difficulties with the meetings, I also was usually an outsider inside of my team.
That's interesting. I heard another person as well. Maybe everyone who like fits this description. I worked at a hybrid remote company, and now I'm joining an all remote company because I think that will be better. Can put their name in the chat if you're comfortable with that. And I think we need a name. We need to kind of name this phenomenon, because I think it's really benefiting GitLab. And if we have a name for it, it's easier to talk about. So I could see us naming that like remote flight or something like that. People fleeing the hybrid remote to the full remote companies. Or it's not a good name, but remote fundamentalism or something, which is not a good name. But refugees, yeah, connotation with something that is I don't think refugees is a great term, but that is exactly the meaning is exactly that. Any other ideas? Remote purity would also be a word, although purity has some connotations that I don't think are great.
I just wanted to chime in really quick. My last company was also like that. It was kind of an odd situation because it was such a small startup. And we started off completely remote, and then they got an office for seemingly no reason. There were 3 people in the office at any one time. But that definitely ended up causing a huge deficit in communication, just because there were basically 3 people who were in on all the information, and every remote person was suddenly pushed out. And that was about after 6 months after founding. And it was really great communication-wise until that happened. So I really think that there has to be a choice between non-remote or remote. For me, like this hybrid remote, it doesn't really ever work as well as either of those. It's always worse than the sum of its parts, in my opinion.
I totally agree. You could almost call it the first class movement, where people don't want to be a second class citizen, so they move to this fully remote. But I think anything with class is also not great.
Maybe first rate remote or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's a good idea. What do you call the opposite of a word? I want to Google hybrid with that, but I forgot how it's called.
Antonym.
Yeah, thank you, Brittany. Purebred. Pure remote.
Something like career nomads, something like that. No, that's I don't know.
Thanks for contributing. unmixed, unadulterated, uncontaminated, unblended, clear, flawless. No, let's not claim that. Straight remote, actual remote, genuine, perfect, true. Yeah, only remote. We're kind of going to all remote. So all remote is, I think, it's not getting popular yet, but I think we can call the phenomenon the flight to all remote or something like that. So we already have all remote as a term. How do we call people moving from hybrid remote to all remote?
I like migration. It's like
migration,
a less controversial topic than a less political topic, I think. Than
migration is not political at all. But I agree that the connotation there is better. Remote purification.
Bad.
I'd stay away from purification.
Thank you. Cool. So the all remote migration, that's I think the best one so far. Upgrading to all remote. The all remote upgrade. I like that.
There's also all remote shift, maybe.
Shift, yeah, that's not bad. I like the upgrade. It's just it's I'm biased, but it makes it accentuates that it's a positive thing, while migration and shift don't necessarily say that. So let's call it the all remote upgrade, and let's talk about that. I think we have some names here, so we can look at how many people are in this call, look at how many put their name in, and we say we saw this phenomena at GitLab where X people did the all remote upgrade, where they went from a hybrid remote to a remote thing. Shadows, can you have a stab at writing that and then putting it in the, making a merge request and mentioning Dylan, Darren and me in the remote channel? Cool.
You got it.
Thanks. The all remote upgrade. It's great.
Put your name in the list of there. I can actually take a percentage of this call.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cool. Sam, I think you have the next item.
All right. Well, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about your family, either your family now or the family you grew up with. Is there an interesting fact or anecdote you can share?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm married without children. I'm married to Karen, and Karen, we're going to celebrate being 20 years together, February 12th. So coming up, we invited our friends to a dinner to celebrate. We only recently got married in 2015. She said, I don't want to lie to the customs officer again. Obviously, this is a public live stream, so I'm not suggesting we ever lie to a customs officer. But visa-wise, it was much better to get married than have a registered partnership. In the Netherlands, that is a thing. We did that. But it was super fun to get married as well. I come from a family of 4 children. So I have an older brother and 2 younger sisters. Since this is a public stream, I'm not going to elaborate beyond that, because if I talk about people in a public setting, it also I kind of no longer have a claim on my personal life, so I'm going to leave it at that. Is that okay? Feel free to ask any follow-up questions.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks. Justin?
Yes. What are your thoughts on UX and how it fits into DevOps?
Well, I think there's 2 components to this question. There's, hey, how important is UX for us to make a great DevOps product. And it's really important. I think if I look at a lot of other open source projects, one of the things they underinvested is user experience. And you end up with a product with a bunch of options and bells and whistles, but it doesn't really flow well, and it's not very intuitive to the user. We're now kind of getting to a state where every product manager has a UX counterpart, and there's a partial researcher who can assist as well. I think that's a very positive development. I think some of the best companies in the world have a 2-to-1 ratio of UX people to and designers to product managers. I don't think those tend to be like the Airbnbs who are very consumer focused. I don't think that's needed for us, but we're doing a lot better than we used to, and we're seeing it pay off in the application where the UX is getting better. And in the end, the UX, how it works is what people perceive. So it's super, super important. The other thing is like, hey, how do we integrate UX flows in the application? How do we make sure UX people can use it as well? We have different initiatives there. We've got design management, where people can also version and comment on designs in GitLab. That's still relatively early. I've not heard people use it a lot, but we're clearly investing there, and I think it's going to get more popular over time. There's also other things. For example, if you have a review app, make it super easy to kind of leave a comment. I think that's also something we want to stimulate. I'm trying to look whether I can see that. It's called usability testing under a verify stage. So this, we call it, well, it links to visual reviews. So shadows, that's maybe an interesting thing, like, hey, is it usability testing or is it visual reviews? Or is visual reviews a part of usability testing? If so, what else is there? So something to dig into. But leaving those reviews, making it easier to kind of get feedback on your application. Super, super important. How far did I get in addressing your question? Anything else you want me to comment on?
No, I'm glad you mentioned the two facets, because I didn't want to specifically, push into that, but those were the two I was hoping you'd address. So thank you.
Okay, Jason.
Sure. I'm a big fan of live music, and I was totally going to ask you about your favorite band or favorite performance, but I was reading back through the questions, and it looks like Susan Hill already did that earlier last year, and that you went to see Radiohead and really enjoyed Lenny Kravitz's show. So I'm going to ask another question then, and for me, I love this Q&A. I think questions are kind of the beginning of all knowledge and all wisdom. And that's probably why I wanted to come back and be a support engineer. So I want to ask that. What question, why Combinator session, or in these one-on-one sessions, or any of the meetings that you've had with internal folks or clients, what question have you been asked that stood out the most to you, and why did it stand out?
Thanks. I'm not going to answer in the form of any question, but I can tell you which questions I like the most. There's two types. One is like the tough question, and it has to do with like compensation or hiring and firing or information that we cannot share publicly. Like, I like those questions where people ask a question where they kind of, that maybe they don't feel comfortable asking. By the way, it's always okay. You can ask any question. I might not answer it. I think that's much more interesting. The questions where you see the other people kind of sitting up in their chair like, oh, this is going to be good. So those are great. The other questions that are always good are about our values. We can't talk about our values enough. We have a lot of materials out there. But it's always good to, if they come by in a call like this. Carolyn.
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this. I have two questions. The first being, how can we all prepare for the company milestone of filing to go public later this year? Is there anything we should keep in mind? No,
we should communicate that. I think the thing to keep in mind is like, it's a milestone along the way. It should be like graduating from high school. It's a great day, but it shouldn't be the biggest thing we amount to. So there's life beyond going public. And then the second thing is, it's a roller coaster. Both the process, are we going to go out? When is it going to be delayed or not? And then afterwards, the stock price goes up and goes down and goes up and goes down. And it's so important to like not focus on the scoreboard, but focus on the long-term goals, like where we want to be November 18, 2023. So that's what you can do. Don't get distracted by it. It's interesting. It's nice. It's okay to pay attention to it, but just don't let it affect your day job. There's going to be good things, bad things. There's going to be a lot more written about us. We're going to have short sellers, all those fun things. So the important thing is not to get distracted.
Great, thank you. And the second question is one of my favorites. What is one of the biggest misperceptions people have of you?
Ooh, that's interesting. Dylan, you want to take a stab at that?
I don't know, misperception. Like Sid has a really good page on his on his communication style and his flaws, which is the CEO page. And so there's some interesting things on there. I think it's one of the things he lists in his flaws is it's very easy to interpret his seriousness as coming across as harsh. And I think, personally, I can identify with that as well. So yeah, I think so far I've been working with him for the last 2 weeks. I'm currently in his apartment. He's an easygoing, friendly guy and jokes around as well sometimes. But yeah, he's doing a job. So every time a CEO corrects you on something or whatever, it can come across as incredibly harsh. But I don't think that's ever his intention. So I don't know. Is that an example?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Dylan.
Yeah, I was listening to your answer about the best questions that you get asked, and I wanted to use an
you combined the two.
I wanted to use an algorithm to optimize on that. And so, what values misalignment has led to the most people being fired?
Results. So most commonly, if people are let go, it's because they didn't achieve the results that are required for the role. And we call that underperformance. Mike.
Hi, Sid. It's kind of a silly question. Everyone else's questions are really good and already asked. I realized when I started working here, that we don't commute. We don't get in our cars and putter down the freeway for an hour each way. We also don't fly all over the world and work on site with customers as much as maybe like a global consultancy would. So do we have some kind of carbon credit that we can claim? Have you looked into that?
So that's great. I don't think there's such a thing available, but what we should do, I think, as a society is price carbon a lot higher than it's priced today. It's underpriced. I thought too that we were very carbon friendly because of not commuting and not building an office building and not heating that and things like that. I looked into it, and just a single flight, like our flight to contribute, can generate as much carbon as like an average US commute does during a year. So it's just, flights are just super, super expensive carbon wise. Now, I think we're doing a lot better than a lot of other startups that have offices and where all kinds of people travel between those offices. But I think that honest comparison is not with other startups, but with the kind of the average across the broader economy. I think software companies should be leading. One of the things we're doing is we're compensating for the carbon we're generating with Contribute. So this year will be the first year that we compensated that. And personally, but I'm not in charge of that part, but personally, I think we should do more there. I was very inspired by what Microsoft did, where they compensate their carbon and even going to be like carbon neutral over their lifetime. I think that's really exciting. I'm inspired by what Stripe did, where they explicitly invest not in carbon compensation, but actually removing the carbon from the atmosphere, which is much more expensive, but something to do early. So I think we can be a leader there. But unfortunately, like as a company, we're not doing better than other regular companies. We probably are doing a lot better than other startups, but I think we should aim higher.
Thank you.
Cool. That was the last question in the Google Doc. I want to thank you so much for joining GitLab and for all the awesome questions. Really enjoyed them. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you.